How we doing, everybody? And welcome back to the Sean Atwood channel. We are live once again with John Wedger, continuing our series, and we're diving into a spicy topic tonight. I just want to say thank you to everybody for waiting. We're a little bit late getting started, but we're here now. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here, and I hope you've had a great day. It's been a few weeks since we've seen John, so we're going to get caught up with him before we get started. Please start thinking if you have any questions or anything you would like to throw at us. Let us know. But yeah, John, how are you? You look like you're communicating through like a hidden camera. I feel like we're on like a low budget spy movie, and we're watching you, or you've been hacked in 1999 on dial up internet, and it's like live in the office with John. So yeah, how you been doing? What's been happening? Fill us in on the underpants and all the madness. What's been going on?
Yeah, so the pants for me continue. So I got shut door there. So. Been doing that. The water's warming up. The water level at the moment is absolutely peaking. So the lake I usually swim in is 3 meters higher than it has been in a decade. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
That's
so so much,
3 meters, man. That's like 10 foot.
I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how high the water is. So that's been cold, but it's warming up now because we've had a little bit of heat. I've started. The interviews, the voice for the voiceless again, and I interviewed a girl called Lydia. And if anyone wants to really sort of listen to a story of abuse and then empowerment, it's one of the very few child abuse interviews I've conducted where it sort of has a happy ending. Well, there's definitely healing and there's definitely justice in this story. So,
John, what the hell is your YouTube channel?
I think it's just John Wedger.
Yeah, I think it is just John Wedger because for some reason, yeah, here we go. John Wedger, 39K. Right, listen, mods, all the mods, get ready to copy this down, please, and start spamming it because we don't do this enough. Right, what are you at? Let's get John up to 40K. That's by next week. John better be on 40K, or I'm deleting everything. I'm deleting it all. Okay.
A couple of years ago, I was on nearly 80,000, and then I sort of moved away from it because I went on to work with autistic kids and things like that, and I stepped away from social media. So I lost a huge chunk of my audience, and I never really sort of took it back where it was. But I'm up out and about again, doing bits and pieces. So I've got an interview coming up this Monday with a guy called Russell, and Russell, hopefully all being well, Russell has got a shocking story to tell, and this is one of total injustice, and how he was stitched up with a murder that he didn't commit as a small child. It's worth watching. So tune in to John Wedger Facebook. I might even put it live on YouTube. But so I started doing that again. I've got a website. I'm going to be starting doing a bit of merchandise, and this is one of the things I'm doing is I do my sort of mad, what do you call them, endurance fundraising, awareness raising stuff. I sort of walked my dog to Manchester along the canals. I cycled an old bike I found in a river all the way to Penzance.
Cycle an old bike you found in a river?
Yeah. And this was a proper old bike, and I cycled it all the way at Penzance in the hottest summer we've ever had. And then I swam 17 miles around the Isles of Scilly, just to raise awareness and funds for a couple of charities and what have you. This time I've got hold of an old post office bike, and I'm going to be cycling from Parliament, and I'm going to be cycling all the way to Perth. I told my friend who tends to accompany me, and he thought it was on about going to Australia, and I went, no, Perth in Scotland, not Perth, Australia. So I'm going to be cycling up there, and that's because of the Fornethi care home scandal that went on, and I've agreed to help raise awareness of what those poor girls went through. And we spoke about that, didn't we, with the Nicholas Fairbairn scandal.
John, so, I just need to chime in just for a quick second. I don't usually do this, but just bringing this up on the screen. This is Sebastian Rogers' timeline of disappearing a 15-year-old boy in Tennessee. This was today. just putting his picture up there just in case for any freak reason anyone watching is in the area. Shocking and horrible. I don't know why, just because autistic kids are autistic, they just are assumed to have wandered off in the middle of the night. Okay, how about lock the doors, mum and dad? How about how about get one of those chub locks? Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, I don't get how a child can wander off in the middle of the night. I'm sorry to be triggered by that, but missing and obviously awful. And yeah.
Well, I suppose the one thing they can bear in mind is that the majority of children come home, and they do. This doesn't seem to be a kid. He's gone out with a flashlight, barefoot. Maybe he's gone looking for something or whatever. We don't know the full extent of his autism. We don't know if he's verbal or non-verbal. They don't give too much away there. Well, let's just pray that he does come back.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on one there. I'm just, I get really triggered when, like, literally every report I see about an autistic kid that goes missing, it's always this wandered off in the middle of the night narrative, as if that's what all autistic kids do.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've got a whack of them, all right? I got a whack of little autistic mini-me's, and nah. I'm not saying, but again, I'm being too critical. I just get very upset with missing children. And this looks like a great little kid. You know, what a tragedy.
Yeah, we don't know the backstory. We don't know if there's a disgruntled relationship that's broken down or anything, you know. So let's just hope it is just a kid just having a bit of a brainstorm and literally is going out there looking for something, and hopefully he will come back or he'll be found.
We'll wait and see if they seize a computer, John. My money's on the next thing. It'll be what's been found on his computer. Okay.
Of course. That's right. That's it. There was a case of two girls that went missing. I think it might have been in Florida, and they started a big search, but they actually did end up being murdered. And the way the press put it out there was that it was a random child abductor had happened to come across them, and the chances of that are in the millions, and then kill them. But when the investigation really, total disclosure was given that these girls had been online, had been linking in with a satanic group, they'd been attending things. One of the girls had a relationship with an older man. So there was this huge history that they failed to disclose and tell us. So we're not really getting much disclosure. And is that picture a representative of this boy, or is it up to date? I mean, that kid looks a lot younger.
Yeah, I bet if we find out he's had a terrible home life, the irony of a constricting snake being a metaphor is screaming out at us now. Also, as well, Erica D. Yeah, I get it, right? Oh, but as well, autism is a spectrum. But you know, the sad thing is, it's kind of like the saying, you're going to lose an eye. You know, when mums are warning their kids about not playing too rough because they're going to lose an eye. Someone lost an eye, Erica D. That's why that saying exists. So you know, at some point, some poor autistic kid has wandered off. And it's the fact that a lot of the time with neurotypicals, they get one version of autism or one encounter with autism, and to them that is autism, and we can't blame the neurotypicals for not understanding the vast spectrum.
I worked with kids that were on the far end. They were non-verbal and they were violent. And one lad, I think he's 13, and he just did a runner once. But he was with his care workers, and they turned their back for a second. And this kid was just gone. They put all their effort, some of them, into one little thing. So they'll see a door.
And I wasn't criticizing you, just to be clear. I wasn't criticizing you.
Slightly out, and they'll just go for the gap. So it's you're right. It's a huge spectrum, and some will have a good understanding, or he might have a brainwave. He might be interested in bats or something. So he's gone out to look at bat, unaware of the danger he's in. But others, some have very low IQs.
It's freaking fascinating, man. It really is. But it's fascinating because, to me, the more that I understand about myself and about the spectrum, it wasn't until I realized how my brain was different that I realized how I could use my brain in ways other people can't. So to me, it's either ignorance is bliss, and I've convinced myself it's an X-Men superpower, but it was 4 decades of mind-numbing feeling like I'm doing everything wrong, and why don't people see the way I do? Why is it when I explain something, people have never thought of it that way, and all of this kind of stuff. And it was mind numbing. It was isolating, and it was crazy. But man, now it's a superpower for me. So yeah, and that's not why we're here, guys. But I just wanted to bring this one to light. Somebody had asked us about it, and do you know what? We will just bookmark this, and we'll keep an eye on this wee lad, because I just want to say, if this turns out to be another case of 8 days later, the police found him in the basement, I swear to God, right? I swear to God, you better not have done anything. You don't look, I mean, you might look a bit shady, but I don't think it's got anything to do with this. You just might be a shady guy. Lime was a poor choice. But yeah,
again, if we go back, that's stepfather.
That's the stepfather.
Yeah, look,
no.
it's stepfather. So
listen, I'm not saying anything about step parents at all, right? I'm just saying there's something going on. There's something going on there. Yeah. And this is a genuine dad. All I'm saying is I wouldn't mess about with this guy's cornflakes, let alone interfere in any way that is life-threatening towards his spawn. Okay. This is no.
I mean, we would need to know what the relationship with mum is like, mum and dad and stepdad. Have there been any interventions with social services, of the police? Are there concerns of stepfather's mistreatment, if there is any? We haven't been given any of that information here. So.
Sorry. Reggie's just coming with a banger and pointed out another one of my grammar errors. So the title of tonight's live stream, John, is John Wedger on police corruption. Does the United Kingdom has a problem? Like that, just to show you how fascinating my brain is. It's obviously both sides were trying to. Let's not discuss the voices in my head, but obviously there was too many suggestions resulting in that. So fantastic. I hope this little boy is fine. I'm telling you now. Okay. So now that we've done the 15
Can you still
minutes,
hear me?
Yeah, of course. We can hear you. So listen, everybody, thank you for being here.
Someone rang. I just had to cut them off.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Right. Someone rang. Usually it cuts it off. So
yeah. Is John covering the Daniel Morgan? I think it's Daniel Morgan next week. Is
Daniel
that right?
Morgan, yeah. This is what. Well, it's Daniel Morgan, yes, but mainly it's on police corruption and Sid Fillery, the officer that was connected to this. This guy has really got my back up. And
listen, this is the thing. For anybody who's maybe new or doesn't know John, you would class yourself as a whistleblower, right?
Yeah, I was a whistleblower. I whistleblew whilst in post, which is quite rare on the child abuse cover-ups, and I suffered a terrible price.
Do you want to just give like the 5-minute condensed history of John Wedger, just for those who don't know?
So I'm a retired police detective. I was a specialist in child abuse investigations. I was on an inquiry which involved young children being taken out of the care system and being pimped out, taken into prostitution, given Class A drugs, and used what we now see as human trafficking and sexual exploitation. But back then it was just called child prostitution. The kids were being exploited at the bottom end in crack houses and at the top end, involving very wealthy people, and some were linked to high up in the establishment. Let's just leave it at that. And
just 1 second, because you say these things, right? And people hear them, John, right? But they don't really hear them. We're talking about a police officer whose job it was to be in charge of child safety, horrified at the corruption and the abuse of children that he witnessed, to the point where you literally put your life on the line, John. Let's not mess around here.
Yeah. There was concerns from the policing minister that I could get killed, and that was raised in Parliament. And I exposed what was going on. I wrote a report that this is what's happening to the children in the capital, and I was threatened by one of the UK's most senior officers that I would lose my home, my job, my children, if I ever mentioned what goes on. And then,
just to be clear, after being warned by the police, you just blew the lid off it, right? It was balls to the wall.
I did the opposite to shut my mouth. I reported them for corruption.
Oh,
But then what they did was, instead of investigating the allegations I made, they investigated me, and I was stitched up with 9 offences. There was a campaign to put me in prison, campaign to take my children into care. They stopped paying me, and a campaign for me to have my house repossessed. And this now, really ties it in.
I know you're hearing this, people. This isn't a former Scientology member or a cult member speaking out against a cult. This was what the British police force and legal system done to someone trying to expose them from the inside. And just needing to spell this out for anybody that watches this back and hasn't taken in what's being said, because it's easy on the internet to just be doing the dishes in the background or whatever. I'm just reiterating, John, because it's important that people understand.
Yeah, and I went on to give evidence at the recent government inquiry, the IICSA, the Independent Investigation of Sexual Abuse. And as a result of my evidence, now there's 5 new points of law regarding child safeguarding and child safety. And hopefully, like really been a segue in which officers can actually speak out. And it's not only that, this level of corruption has now come to the forefront. It's not just me, there's many others, but I sort of made a name for myself through this.
Don't say that the actual name of this person, but are we at a point where we can even begin to start talking about this at any point, John?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we can. I'm quite
maybe not on this channel though, sadly.
Yeah, I can give an update on what's happening to the poor guy.
I think what I'll do is I'll speak to Sean. I imagine what he'll say is too risky, and then we'll do it on my channel, and we'll use all of the other socials of Sean's that aren't as risky for him, because I mean, I've got a file, bro, ready for a documentary on this guy, where I spent a year going through all his previous interviews, screen recording, downloading, and I've got it all sat and ready.
Well, if you see what's happened, Channel 4 have tried to attack him, and Channel 5 did a 15-minute piece on him the other day. So he's obviously what he's done is hit a nerve, and that they really want to cover up the SRA stuff. They don't want.
You know what? This. I mean, I'm not being funny. Have a look at this. Like, here it is. An inconvenient reality, because that was a direct quote from Wilfred Wong. I just said it. I just told you what I'm doing it myself. So I've got all of this, man. We should talk about this. Because...
Yeah, and I'd like to come up with a few points of law, because what he actually was convicted of was kidnapping. It was more child abduction, which would have actually a maximum sentence of 7 years. They did him for kidnapping, and he's been given 17 years with a recommendation from the Home Secretary that he serves 11 and a half.
And just to be clear as well, we're not going to go into this. We will go into this, but we're talking about a barrister with no criminal record here, okay? Just to be clear. It was a serious case, don't get me wrong, but he was made a poster child for don't mess with us, okay?
Yeah. It's the Satanists flexing their muscles.
Wild. And I'll tell you something, we will get into this on my channel, because the case itself is bonkers. Half of you will be like, I do not agree with what you're saying. The other half of you will be like, I fully understand and see it all. It's a Marmite scenario. I'll guarantee you that. But we need to talk about it. It's time. Yeah. So I'll set that up with John. I'll make sure it's advertised and you can all know, but we'll keep it off Sean's channel just for too many serious eyes that watch what's going on here. So we'll keep it somewhere where if things have to be deleted, it's not a problem. It's only my life. And I'm okay with that. So, right, police corruption. You're not telling me that the police are corrupt, John, right? Not the police, right? You can't be talking about the UK police, John, right? Okay, so now that we're past that, just for the algorithm, the police are great. The government's great. Everything they tell you is real. Right, John?
It's strange, because everything within the government is very heavily compartmentalized, and it's a strata. There's some people that will never come across police corruption, and it's not their reality. So what I went through, most people will never go through. Others will, and they'll take the warning, the heed, and they won't go there. I did. And listen, I want to make something clear. I was a detective, and I've been about. I'm no fool.
Yeah.
I've seen corruption. I'm in no way ever going to say I was involved in it, but people have to draw their own inference here. But let me make it clear that if drug dealers get, let's say, taxed, right?
That's
As
what it's
far as I'm
called.
concerned, they've not worked for that money. They've not grafted hard for it. You know, they've not paid their tax. They've not contributed anything to society. And if corrupt officers take their money, do you know what? I don't care. I'm not interested.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I personally will say this. If I was a policeman, I would be that policeman. I would be the most politically acceptably corrupt way. And I'd take it way too far, and 6 months I'd be in jail, right? But those 6 months would be great.
Well, the other thing that I say, the police are like wasps, right? Leave them alone and you won't get stung.
Yeah.
Right. But when you've got these idiots that go up and antagonize them, next thing they get bounced, you know, that's tough luck. And like I say, so if the police are a bit different than when I joined. When I joined, you got these moronic auditors, and I cannot stand these people that go up to government buildings, film them, and then just spout nonsense. They remind me of train spotters. But a more sort of special needsy train spotter. I can sort of see that, you know, the value in train spotting. I don't like it, and it would not be my thing. But I think, okay, you know, it's their little thing, and whoever. And as an investigator,
John, they're not out doing anything with kids. Okay, in 2024, if your hobby doesn't involve abuse, it's a pass. Okay, so big shout out to the train spotters who are normal people. Big shout out to you.
That's right. And but when it comes to these auditors that deliberately antagonising the police, in my day, they would have done that once and once only. They would have absolutely just, like I said, they would have been what we call bounced, and that was it. They would never ever do it again. So I cannot stand these, and they're gone about corruption. I see quite a few of these sites were exposing police corruption because the cop car is parked on a yellow line while they get McDonald's. That is not corruption. Let me put that right.
Dude, I would abuse the siren. I'd be taking all of the drug dealers' monies, all of it, and running. And anytime I had to go anywhere, it'd be 90 miles an hour with a siren on. I would abuse so much. I mean, I'm just being honest. That's, you know,
yeah. I mean, and I'm saying, but I don't care. I'm not one interested. You know, and I was given a talk in a prison, and someone sort of said that, you know, you must have been. And I said, well, listen, if you want me to speak about things I might or might not have been involved in, first of all, you tell me all the crimes you've committed, and then you, by example, then I'll go from there. You know,
and I just want to say, like, that's I'll be honest, that's happy corruption. Where did all Saddam's gold bars go? USA and UK Army. I'm just saying, there's probably some US and American Army soldiers that got some nice houses.
Do you know one of the first jobs of the police in the City of London was to follow about the fire brigade when they took a call to make sure they didn't steal anything, right? And so the fire brigade had a reputation. They're called the London Fire Brigade, the LFB. We used to call them London's finest burglars.
No way.
I did an investigation that took me to New York, and I worked with the NYPD.
Yeah.
And one of the detectives, he said, John, it's exactly the same as London. I couldn't see any difference. Except that there was Mexicans. It was like London with Mexicans.
Yeah.
And he said to me, how'd you get on with the it's quite a funny story, but he said, how'd you get on with the fire brigade? I went, we don't like them. And he said they're the biggest thieves in New York, the NYFD, you know. And I can always remember when I first joined the police, my first year, our inspector was an ex-traffic sergeant. So he was one of the traffic cops, and, you know, they really are the worst of the worst. You know, these are the train spotters. These are the auditors of policing, these guys.
Okay.
And he had this thing, he'd get a hard on for drink drivers every Christmas. And so he said, right, we're doing a roadblock this winter's evening in December. I was very new. And it was quite a strict job back then, quite a disciplined service.
Yeah.
And there'd been a briefing, and I hadn't really listened too much about it. Anyway, we're ground assigned on the street. A car gets put up. It's coming my way. I just hear my shoulder number, 309, stop that car. So I pulled it in. And the guy that's driving is huge. He's a monster.
Yeah.
And he said to me, just nick me. I went, why should I just nick you? And he went, well, I'm drunk. I said, okay. How many you had? He said, I don't know. I haven't counted. I said, well, you better get out. And
No,
this guy,
he's a dad, right? Whose wife is giving him a hard time, and he just wants a week off. All right, he just wants a week off, and if he has to go, if he's got to have 2 pints and drive recklessly for 60 yards to get that week off, he's getting it. He's getting it.
Well, listen to what happened. So he said, right, that's my job finished. I'm going to get banned. He said, and I'm not going to I'm going to lose my job. I said, well, why? Why are you going to lose your job? And he said, well, I'm a sergeant in the parachute regiment, and
Right.
I'm teaching. There was an army barracks nearby, and he said, I'm teaching the lads their PT. He said,
Right.
if I can't have a criminal record and I can't be banned from driving, I'll lose my job. I went, have you got your ID card? He said, yeah. So he showed me his army ID, and I went, wait there was something the inspector said about this. So I went up to my inspector. I said, Governor, please, can I take your advice? This guy's drunk. He went, well, nick him. I said, well, it's not that. He's in the army. He said, have you seen his ID? I went, yeah. And he said, 309, with the shoulder number. He said, what did I tell you at the briefing? He said, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, ambulance, police, let them go, fire brigade, nick them. And that was it. So I said, no, you're in the army, you can go, leave your keys with me.
Yeah, now I'll be honest, I would be corrupted, right, as a policeman, but I would be a psychopath to drunk drivers. All of that stolen money that I took, I'd be planting it on them. They'd all be going to jail for 10 crimes they didn't commit, and they would never drink drive again. I'm sorry. I don't like sober people who drive too fast. I mean, the motorway, okay. But man, I turn into a Karen real fast with people that don't drive responsibly.
Well, you know, one of the things I say is any officer that sort of around the time I joined and before, if they say that they've never committed perjury, they've never lied under oath in written evidence, begged false witness, false testimony, as the Bible says, is a liar. Is a lie. One of the first things you're taught in the police is to lie in evidence, lie in your books. It's how it is. It's how it was.
Here's a moral dilemma question for you then. Okay, so in your scenario, none of this was your choice. You were following orders, right? So how much of that happens? Like, for example, what is the likelihood of a policeman saying to that superior officer, "Nah, I'm going to nick him anyway"? I mean, what would be the repercussions for you?
Yeah, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good. No one would work with you. It just, it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. So, you know, one guy, he used to write his evidence separate. We'd all collude with the evidence. He'd write it separate, and that was it. He didn't last. You'd never get in the CID. Yeah. The CID would never, and then in the CID, you would never then get onto a specialist unit if you behave like that. It just would not happen. So that was it. But in respect to child abuse and covering up with the children, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to be part of that. In fact, I was going to do the opposite. I was proactively going to go and expose that. Anyone that was involved in covering up child abuse, it stopped with me. And I dug my heels in and said, no, this isn't happening. Don't matter what you do to me, you threaten me, whatever. I'm not having it. It's just not having it. You know, it's just not happening. So I realised, you know, the teeth that they've got when they want to, how spiteful they can get. And it's not about ruining your life. Sometimes it's about taking your life. Yeah. So this is why this Daniel Morgan case really intrigued me, because firstly, it was in a part of London where I first started my policing, Southeast London. This guy, Sid Fillery, who was a detective sergeant at Catford. Maybe I brushed shoulders with him, maybe I didn't. And also there is one officer that gets caught up in this that did work with me at the same station. So, and I want to sort of, like we did on the last episode we did when we went on about the kids' homes, how actually you do get conspiracy of silence. And we sort of explain the dynamics where you've got those high up in the judiciary, in the procurator fiscal in Scotland and everything else, how the perversion that went on and how they covered it up because they're all in on it. I want to explain how police corruption works. And this is a very, very good example. It's all about wheels within wheels, and it always has been, and it always will be. So in March, beginning of March 1987, let's go back there, Southeast London, there's a private detectives agency. It's called Southern Investigations, and it's run by two people, Jonathan Rees, who's a northerner from Doncaster, and we've got Daniel Morgan, who's Welsh. I don't know where in Wales he's from, but anyway, he's Welsh. And I don't know how comes they both ended up in London, these two, but they get together and sort of circa.
Hang on, John. That's next week's live stream.
What? Sid Fillery.
Yeah, we've got tonight is police corruption, and next week is Sid Fillery and Daniel Morgan.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I'll put that to one side then.
Sorry, bro. Sorry, bro. Yeah, no. It's otherwise. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to do that one tonight, we can.
No. Let's keep it in the timeline. Let's keep it in the
timeline. Yeah. If anybody just got excited there, I'm sorry for just ruining your evening.
That's quite all right, and I'll explain how police corruption works. Now, they did have an algorithm, the corruption command, and they did a profile on what makes an officer corrupt, and they tend to be that in their second 10 years of service. So you do 30 years, so usually in the 20 years onwards, they're middle-aged. They might never really have got in trouble before, but all of a sudden it's financial restraints that start doing it. So people start getting caught up. Divorce is very, very common in the police. There's many factors, ego being a major player, but also civilians not really understanding the pressures of policing, and you've got to really
is it the pressures of policing, or is it the fundamental budget issues that the police have? Because if the police were funded 10 times to what they are now, the pressure wouldn't be as heavy, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. One thing that cut corruption in half was treating police properly. So they housed them properly. It was Sir Edmund Davis. He reviewed it, and he said, right, the police are underpaid. That's why corruption is rife. They're employing local lads to work local areas. It causes corruption.
Yeah.
Right. But the police have gone back to that. They've cut everything. They stripped as bare. So Edmund Davis brought in his recommendations, which got implemented. So they built housing, section housing, married quarters. They got huge allowances. Their wages went up. Corruption really was, the reserve of these elite investigative units, shall we say. Yeah. And I'm going to show the different strata of corruption. It is, we can sort of, it's a spectrum as we were on about earlier on.
Yeah.
So it got out. But what the police have done now, the government's done it, has stripped it bare again. And they're employing what I would say is substandard people, and they're employing locals as well. And they're putting them in the areas, what they call the ends, where they live. And it's going to we're going to see corruption, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it. Not just are we seeing corruption, we're seeing a lot of perversion. And that seems to crop up a lot of officers getting done for rapes and stuff like that. We're getting the Dave Carricks of this world and the Wayne, what's his face? The other one.
Do you think that's got anything to do with desperation on the police recruitment side? Do you think it's less people and more bad apples, shall we say?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, they used that excuse, well, not an excuse, but they used that for anytime there's a series of American cops getting trigger happy, it always comes down to, well, this is what we've got to pick from. Nobody wants to be a cop anymore, sort of thing.
Well, Scotland had a huge problem because it didn't subscribe to the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, so there's no thing called PACE, so there's no rights to the prisoners in Scotland. So you could interview under PACE. Prisoners had rights, and these were legal entitlements that the police couldn't breach. And solicitors had to be present. Interviews would take place with solicitors present. Everything would be monitored. The police wouldn't be, on the whole, left alone. The investigator wouldn't be left alone with the prisoner. The solicitor always had to be there. And if you talk to them, it'd have to be recorded contemporaneously straight away and signed off, or it had
Yeah.
to be done in the confines of a tape recorded interview scenario. Scotland had a system where they can interview someone. It didn't have to be tape recorded. If notes were taken in the absence of tape recording, they could be done in pencil.
Here's an actual grown-up question for you right here. John, what do you think are the measures that need to be put in place to reduce police corruption?
Okay.
Just delete it and start again, I would have thought.
Right. Well, I would say treat the coppers properly. They must be trained properly.
Yeah.
At the moment, it just seems appalling. Look, they've got rid of the big training centres. Discipline needs to come back and be installed. You know, I don't bear well under discipline, but you need it. They need to be looked after. They need to be monitored. Coppers need to be given time out every now and then. So certain units, especially like child abuse, you shouldn't keep an officer in there more than 2 years. Some done 20 years in there. They were mentally ill. They were racked with PTSD. You know, just treat them the right way. Have a proper infrastructure. Go back and make it a career, a vocation, a lifestyle.
See, do you not think that when you say treat the coppers with respect, that it's very class-based, the response you're going to get to that? Because I imagine at the top of the pinnacle of society, people would say, of course, I'm going to respect the police, John. Why could you say that? But at the bottom, where we're in low-income areas, we've got little opportunities, we've got terrible family scenarios, and the police are seen as this negative. Right. How would you address that?
Then they need to go back to robust policing, right? I gave a talk a Mothers Against Knife Violence, right? It was in the East End of London. The majority of the audience were from the black community, and they'd lost children to knife crime.
Yep.
They knew I was a policeman, and I said to the families, what would you have wanted the police to do? And everyone, without exception, unanimously, the parents, majority of them were from the black community, said more stop and search. If the police were stopping and searching and taking our streets back, my son would be alive today. So when we see these liberals say stop and search is this, do you know, it's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. The parents of dead children through knife crime all insisted the police need to be doing their job and stopping and searching. It's an embarrassment what you see now. They're running from criminals.
Do you think
they're being threatened and they're backing down? The police should never, ever back down.
No, I agree. But clearly that must be a budget thing, right? I mean, stop it and searching.
No, it's a managerial thing. It's political intervention. And there should never be political intervention in policing.
Do you think because the majority of the people you spoke to were black and from were black, do you think that affected how the profiling of the stop and searches would go, and the police feared the backlash, the accusations?
If you work in Bradford, right, you're going to stop and search predominantly local white lads and Pakistani boys, right? If you work in Brixton, you're going to be stopping mainly for black boys, right? If you work, let's say in Southall, you're going to be stopping mainly Sikh and Indian boys. It's the demographic of where you're working. That's what you're going to be doing.
But the papers don't report things nicely, John, when they try and...
No, they don't. See, look, the police should be on the street. Police stations were geographically positioned to allow access for the public, so the public could go in to a town centre and report a crime. There should always be a desk sergeant there. There should be none of this telephone reporting, right? They should double the police numbers. They shouldn't be driving around in cars. There should be cars, of course there should, but they should be proactively and reactively going out there and hitting crime and looking for it.
I'm going to give you something that's going to completely back up everything you're saying there, right? Years ago, I used to run club nights. You hire out a venue, you put on a DJ, you sell tickets, you make your money. And I did it for years and years and years in Edinburgh. And, sometimes you might want to, stand around the corner and have yourself a little cigarette, if you know what I'm saying. And in Edinburgh, no problem. There was no police anywhere, okay? And then I went through to Glasgow, right? Which is on the West Coast, to run a club night there. And that's where Scotland's police budget is, okay? Because Friday and Saturday night, mate, I'd never seen as many police in my life, okay? And nothing was happening. There was just two bobbies, like when the introduction of the bill, where their wee feet are walking, two bobbies constantly everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere. It was mind-blowing. I'd never experienced anything like that. And there was no little, do you know what I'm saying? So technically the police present stopped that from happening. So it completely works.
Of course. And like you know you're breaking the law, and if you're breaking the law, you've got to accept the consequence. You can't be going around doing what you want. And we're seeing, you know, look, it's called recklessness. And if you have recklessness, you are totally blind to any consequence, right? Yeah. Children are naturally narcissistic. If you don't boundary a child, it becomes a psychopath. And this is what we're getting. We're getting lawlessness. Look at our prisons. Total and utter lawlessness in our prisons. I work in a prison at the moment. I do a day a week in a prison. The guards look like they're straight out of the housing estates. They look no different.
I'll be honest with you. I watched a documentary recently about prisons and the people who work in them. Not for me. Here's an interesting, just since we naturally segued into this, John. So the police, pretty corrupt, okay? What is the corruption like on the level of the prison officer, the prison guard? And I don't mean the guy who's just terrible at his job, lets people get stabbed, doesn't do anything. I mean the guy who's, you know, bringing in shanks and, you know, spice on paper and all this.
It's not so much the men. They're employing a lot of women that are local girls, and they're having relationships. They are being charmed by these Romeos that are doing time. Yeah. And then they're getting in relationships, sometimes with multiple relationships with inmates, and that's how a lot of the stuff's coming in. Like I say, the lads tell me all the time, they say a lot of the girls, we're getting the girls to do it.
Type one in the chat if you've got at least one friend from Liverpool with a prison boyfriend. One in the chat. Yeah, I don't get what the allure is to the bad boy, okay? Because I don't know.
It's Darwinistic, isn't it? You know, because that's the hardest boy on the block or whatever it might be.
Do you think that it's an amplified version of the condition that some women have where they know they can be the one to change this guy? Do you see what I'm saying? There's that category of women that is drawn to the train wreck relationship because they believe they can be the one to change that.
Well, if that is their thought process, they're probably damaged people themselves.
Obviously.
And that may well be the fact that they think that, but they themselves are damaged. And it's but you know, corruption, you know, it's been big, and it has to be rooted out. You can't have corruption, you can't have it, and you can't have lawlessness on the streets. Look, we pay good money to be police. We don't pay to be on the phone for an hour and no one turning up. You know, if someone's kicking off, there's a domestic saying police should be there within minutes, booting the door in and flattening whoever the perpetrator is, and flattening them, making it, you know, who was it who said that I can't remember, it was Sir George Bernard Shaw said that the only justice a criminal gets is when the police arrest them, and that was back in the day when the police would turn up, and if they have to turn up, all hell will break loose, you know. And same, you nick a car, we catch you, you're going to get a clump. And a lot of people, they do reminisce, including the old gangsters, they reminisce on the days of not only getting a clip round the ear roll, but also the gangsters will say, well, when the flying squad turned up, you knew you was in trouble. You know, you knew that you was in trouble. But if there is no punishment, there is no consequence, you're going to have lawlessness and recklessness. And that is not fair for decent people. It isn't.
This is wild. I was assaulted last year by a 35-year-old substance distributor and user. Spat in my face 4 times. I don't know what this means. Skimmed a booklet in your eye. I hope you don't mean like a booklet in your eye, like a paper booklet. That sounds agony. I have COPD, arthritis, diabetes, and a heart problem. Police, 5 days to come.
Right. And I really, really sympathise with that person. I know a guy who works in the telephone reporting part of the police. He said 80% of reported crimes, 80% of them, they're told to write off. They rely 80% of the times for CCTV corroboration. Now, that is not the public's job to get the CCTV. for it.
I'm not being funny.
That's down to the police to deal with that.
Just go and find a group of really aggressive local users and pay them 20 quid to go and take a hammer to his hands. I'm not being serious. I'm not condoning that kind of action. I'm just saying oh God, I've forgotten what the word. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. The thing is, they wouldn't need to if the police did their job and went out there and made sure that person never did it again. Now, when it comes to rehabilitation of criminal, that's okay, but that's not the police's job. That may be the justice system's job.
Yeah.
You know, that would be the penal system to take over and realise where we've gone wrong. But we need to take our street. There should never, ever be a no-go zone. Never. You know, and when there is, they should send in the mad dogs that they've got, the ex-squaddies, the tough guys, and say, right, boys, go in there and sort this mess out.
77. Oh no, nah. Do you know what? You just need a crazy mid-40-year-old son to come and deal with that. If you've got no kids that will come and deal with that, Miss Tuesday, I'll supply you with an email address and maybe we can make something happen one day. But just, do you know what? You know what you've inspired me to do? And buy my mother one of those body CCTV cameras. That's what she's getting for her birthday. If you're watching, Mum, good luck.
You know, look, the police have always done one thing: they pick low-hanging fruit. A detective's job is to look at information that goes towards a suspect and goes away from them. So they've got to go there, and if you want gold, you've got to dig for it. They should have tenacity. They should be going out there fishing. They should be recruiting informants. They should be, you know, really doing their job, which is what I enjoyed. I love doing it. You know, trawling through the internet, trying to find a clue, going through, making inquiries, linking in with the public, doing public appeals, doing surveillance, doing this. And then when they hit people, hit them hard and take them down. And especially if they're dealing on a house estate, no. You know, it's like a big glamour in it. No, get rid of it. And if you get rid of it, you get rid of the gun crime, you get rid of the knife crime, you get rid of the shoplifting.
Okay, so here's an interesting one for you, right? So how do we fix a situation where a lot of the time we're looking at under 20s who are selling substances that then turns into a turf war situation because of the other kids under their 20s down the street who are selling substances? There's no way for these, there's no opportunity. They've not done well at school. There has to be a bigger issue, right, than just police.
Of course there is. And we've got to stop blaming me and blaming you. Why are we allowing this? No, hang on. You bring a child into this world, mother and father, you've got a duty of care. 80% of all abuse goes on in the home. We have got a huge problem because of one thing: absent fathers. Men have got to stop having this baby mother, baby father bullshit attitude. It's dangerous and it's damaging. A kid needs both parents. Correct. And I'm telling you now, go back to old values, have mother and father on the scene. That, okay, things break down and there's some men that are pigs and there's some women that ain't nice, you know? We get that. But we can't base an argument always on the anomalies.
Yeah.
You know, when I went to school in the 1970s, there was one kid there who didn't have a dad, one kid. Is that representative now? Of course not. Of course it won't be. You know, most of the young lads I deal with, they have no male influence in their life. Now, Ron, you said something really interesting. I want to come back to this about Neds.
Okay.
Ned, non-educated delinquents, right? Now, there was a study done about Neds, the Glaswegian Neds, the West Coast Neds, right? The schemies.
Yep.
Now, the Glaswegian accent
is
a John guttural class, abrasive accent, right? Okay. And they couldn't work out why these Neds.
I just want to say there's a lot of Glaswegians in the side chat. Okay, that is, you did cut out momentarily. So that John is giving a broad overview of the accent. That is not his opinion of the accent.
It's not look, there's a point that goes with this, and I think anyone.
She's watching you, John. Kaz's watching. Okay. She'll get you, man. She'll get you.
I like hen. Listen, there's Kazza Bear. There's a reason for what I'm saying, and if you bear with me, you'll get this point.
Oh, he's not wrong, Kazza. I mean, I'm not being funny. Come on, mate. Right. I'm not being funny. Come on.
Yeah. You know, there's not been too sensitive about this. Right, there's a reason to this, and let me give the full context.
Yeah.
They couldn't work out why these Neds of recent years had this squealing, whiny accent, right? Where did that come from? And they found out why. That a lot of them had no male input in their lives. They were stuck in flats with a neurotic mother, maybe, for example, screaming and screaming. So their whole mimicking came from a squealing, neurotic, high-pitched woman. And that is why the male, the Neds, ended up with this more of a high pitch than
I don't know.
I'll tell you,
I don't know.
it's look into it. It was a brilliant study done in it. Why?
Do you know what that
I
sounds
can't
like to
remember who
me?
said it.
That sounds like an English woman who was very badly treated by a Scottish man, trying to dig her opinion in and come up with a madness. Okay, because I'll be honest, traditionally, I think the West Coast sounds more like what you would expect someone 500 years ago in Scotland to sound like. I'm not saying that they're all behind 500 years on the West Coast. I am a little bit, okay? It's the West Coast. I'm East Coast. Anything outside of Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland, to me, is like north of the wall in Game of Thrones. North of the wall, Edinburgh.
What we got in London now is we have no longer got a Cockney accent. It's gone. It has totally gone. The kids have not got Cockney accents. You can go to Manchester, they still got it. You go to Scotland, they still got theirs. You go to the northeast, they still got their Geordie twang going. London has got nothing. It's gone. It's totally and utterly gone. Right? They've lost the totally lost the accent. But look, the thing is about corruption, right? And the social science of it all. I can only come from two positions here. One, as a single father, and realised my kids needed a mother. Unfortunately, that weren't their reality. It was just me, and they suffered emotionally in other ways by not having that. That when you've got that stability of both parents, and unfortunately how they screwed us financially, and that of course it's not very viable anymore, and hence our birth rate is plummeting, and probably will never ever.
Hey, listen, you got a punch in, all right? You got to be arthritis in that, and you got a punch in. My G.
Okay, all right, but so as someone who's brought up boys, and then the need to sort of do the right thing and not abandon them, but also coming from my background as a policeman, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a libertarian. So I'm a police officer that works some of the most dangerous streets of Europe.
Yeah.
And you sort of saw what worked and what didn't. There's no need to go out your way and unnecessarily brutalize someone and stitch them up. I'm against corruption, right? I'm against bearing false witness, and I'm not ever going to admit to being caught up in it, but I've seen it, and it's not right. It shouldn't be right. But back then it was a cultural reality, and hopefully CCTV goes a long way to sort of eliminating that. But we can't ignore crime. We just can't do it. And we need to take. But when you get corruption, you're looking at something that's totally different. You see, you get people going to it for a few reasons. One is there's a financial incentive that they're in trouble, and for example, you get a warrant, right, to raid a house, and it's a drug dealer's house. And one of the things they used to do was hide their money in the freezer, right? No one knows that money's there apart from the man who's got it, right? So no one knows there. So you find that money, no one else is about, and you can pocket that money, right? There may be £2,000-3,000, whatever it might be. Now, it might be that it's a lone person working on his own, and that keeps him out of trouble. But again, he's sitting there thinking, if I can only do that next month, I'm going to be in the clear. And then you've got organised corruption, where you've got police units, mainly detective units, that is their MO. They will target the drug dealers, and they will be pocketing that money, right? Another thing that they would do is recruit informants, and informants used to get paid cash. So you go to a safety deposit box, they get key, you get key, and you give them the cash. Now that used to get shared out. 50 for them, 50 for the old bill. Okay, and then they get used to it. And then the police start then linking in with the gangsters, and they start wanting that gangster life. They can get as many drugs as they want. As a copper, if you want to get your hands on drugs, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. I've held just 1.8 million pounds in 2 massive bags in my hand.
That would
Right.
be the last day that anyone's seen me. I would be in the Bahamas under a new name, Simon something or other, and that'd be me done, mate. A 1.8 mil.
Well, the other thing is that I've been around 320, 96% purity kilos of heroin.
You can't spend that, mate. You can't spend that.
One of them bars, if I was to take one of them bars of heroin up to Glasgow, right?
I could rip your arm off, mate.
Honestly, I could
smell it as soon as you came over the border.
Well, that would go. The street value was 70,000. I'd get 20,000 wholesale bulk for that straight away.
Yeah.
You know, you've only got to get a contact and say, right, you know, look, this is what I've got. Bang. You know, and the other thing is, you know, when you start getting in with people, you start saying to the drug dealers, right, we'll work together here. You carry on. We're going to leave you alone, but we're going to take down your competition, and that will raise the drug seizures in that area. It will lower the drug dealing in that area. And we'll say to that person, you've got to be discreet, but we can do that. So they start giving you information. They'll say, right, that guy down there, he's doing it. You know, you're going to find money. Boom, boom, bang.
Did you ever see the TV show called Ideal? Years ago, it was about.
Was that with Johnny Vegas?
Johnny Vegas, and his best mate from school was a policeman, and he was a dealer, and he would just go and bust all the other dealers in Johnny Vegas's area, so that the only place people could buy stuff was off him. So I mean, it's mad.
Well,
because
I knew guys. There were 3 guys that in their lunch break, they would go out and they would apply for credit cards.
Right.
In their name, so they get because back then the postman was stealing credit cards because they knew there was a card in there and it was new. They could go out there, and as long as they acted straight away, they could absolutely rinse the thing. So these boys were basically cutting the postman out. They were getting credit cards, and then they were swapping them around. So I had yours, you had mine, he had the third person had whatever's, and then going out there hammering it, and then just saying to the credit card company, I never received it. And then, of course, they'd write off the debt. It never came out your thing. And they made a fortune doing that. A fortune, you know, just doing that. So there's scams within scams. You know, I knew one guy, and he was a drug addict, and he never had to pay for his drugs because, you know, stop and search or whatever it might be. I don't, you know, who knows? But, you know, and then you start moving up, and then you get trusted, and you start going on to bigger units. So you go on to central squads, what they call them. You know, these big squads where you're now dealing with armed robbers, and you're now dealing with big money and organised criminals, where they can start making offers. They can start saying, look, I had an offer made to me, and I'd upset this gang. They were Turkish gangsters, Turkish mafia.
That's one of the worst gangs to annoy, John. Turkish, Romanian, Argentinian, all of those ones, scary.
Well, these were bad boys. So their average take-ins on a good night was £80,000, right? So they decided to give me a night's take-in, so I'd leave them alone because I was putting a big dent in their shenanigans. So I went to just a meeting with one and his solicitor. His solicitor went out for a cigarette and left me in a room with him. Said, "Oh, he wants to tell you something. I think he's going to give me information," and he passed it over £4,000. I don't take it.
Can we just talk a minute about freaking lawyers, right? I spoke to a hitman from prison and I asked him, "How do you set up a hit?" And it's like, "Oh, it all goes through the lawyers." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, nobody's going to take a hit unless it goes through their lawyer." And it's like, what? Bonkers, mate. So the corruption is wild. Just keep going with what you're saying, because
you know, and then it goes higher up as well because people higher up are involved. But I wouldn't take it. But then the guy said, "Look, tomorrow we'll give you 76, and that's it. We'll give you 80,000."
The lawyer.
No, well, his lawyer knew about it.
Yeah, obviously, the lawyer can't be there when the illegal act takes place, but they
I
can
said to him,
facilitate it all.
you knew about this, and he just laughed. But I didn't take the bribe, and I reported it, and then I ended up working on a covert level, so I ended up becoming like a participating informant. So
Yeah.
everything I did, what I
I
was
hope
in.
I hope you're not referring to me there, Fred. Hope you're not ever stating that I would put something out there that I'm directly quoting as rubbish, because that would be naughty of you, Fred, because I would never do that. Never do that. But yeah, I mean that the lawyer.
It goes from turning a blind eye to thieving to organised criminality, and then you start getting in the pockets of big major villains. So you've only got to listen to testimonies of these British gangsters and the connections they had with corrupt police. You get it with, Dave Courtney. There was that case where he was involved with that guy Austin Warnes in a corruptible relationship.
Yeah.
That guy Joey Pyle goes on about. He was caught up. There was some corrupt relationship he had with an officer. Kenny Noy was caught up. The officer that was in charge of the investigation against him was in his pocket. And then these coppers then start crossing the line. So what they'll start doing is getting involved with women that might be linked to gangsters. They might start sniffing cocaine, and then once they do that, the blackmail starts. So one guy, what he was doing was for a firm of gangsters in southeast London, they were paying him £2,000 for every PNC check he was doing. So he was using the police national computer to get in the information, and he was selling it on to this firm if they wanted to know about someone or whatever.
Right.
So this went on for a little while. He would meet up with them. Sorry about that.
One moment, please.
He would pass the information on, and they would pass over an envelope with £2,000. So it went on for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, what happened was he went for the meet, and they passed over an envelope, and it had 50 pence in it. And he opened it and said, "What's that?" And he went, "That's your new wage from now on. You need to keep going." And what he did, he ended up handing himself in because he knew the game was over. He handed himself in, and he thought, "Well, I'm going to go down now. I might as well take them down with me." And then people start grassing, and these gangsters that say we don't grass, we don't violate that code, is the biggest load of BS you've ever heard. Honest to God, all informants come from the criminal network, all of them. They don't come from decent people. They go at Crime Stoppers, and they get sod all for it. That gangsters make a living out of it.
Livy had a question that sadly, I think that the whole narrative of this live stream has answered itself. John was a policeman who was trying to get these guys caught, and he was ostracized, threatened, all of these. So just take us through exactly how the police work as a unit, and how rare it is for someone to actually stand up against them, John, because it must be terrifying.
Yeah. Today's environment is different. When I did it, it was bad. So, for example, I went to a police station which become infamous for CID corruption. It's been any book to do with police corruption, they show this CID department. It was at Belgravia Police Station, and it was full of every single officer that was seriously involved in corruption was put in this one CID, and it was quite a unique environment. So one day, one of the sergeants, he'd messed up on a witness. He failed to get a witness to court, and there was a compromise then with the job got compromised, right? So that we all went out for a beer and a curry, and the DI, he was a monster of a man, big guy. He called this DS outside, said, "I need to have a word with you about what went on." He went, "Yeah." As he went out, he smashes him full out in the face there.
Oh.
The guy's cheekbone pierces his eye, blinds him. He goes down on the floor. People rush out, and he said, "Leave that piece of S there. He can stay there. No one is to pick him up. No one's called the police." And that the guy had to be pensioned off, and no one said a word, And it's, you know, your life would be a misery. That's on a local level because they'd see you as a grass.
Yeah.
So I never had the compulsion or the moral fortitude to grass up anyone that was stealing drugs.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, John, right?
It didn't really concern me. But
You were activated when you realized that it wasn't one policeman that was corrupt in in the child safety department. It was the entire child safety department.
It went very high up because the kids.
Yeah.
So these kids are being used by people very established in our society, and this was never to go out because child abuse can become and has become politically influential.
Sorry, John. I'm sorry I keep interrupting you. I just need to sort something out in the side chat. Spanner is the collective term for moderators because you all have spanners next to your name. She wasn't calling you a spanner. She was referring to the mods collectively by the collective terms, those with spanners in their names, because they have spanners. My American friend Shane is very confused because he knows it as a wrench. And now everyone thinks that someone's being called a spanner in a derogatory sense. So no, it just means mods. Sorry, John. We're back in the room.
Right. So they needed to keep a lid on the child trafficking because there was people in the establishment that were having sex with these children. And we sort of explained why people have sex with children in our last thing we did about the Scottish judiciary.
Yeah.
And that sort of explains that. But it's got a huge blackmail value and it's like a commodity that absolutely urinates all over drugs and guns and everything else. You know, the kids are the key commodity. So it was in this senior officer's, not just in his best interest, but it was in the establishment's best interest, and he made that clear to me. This would ruin us, past, present, the institution that is the Metropolitan Police, past, present, future. This must not and never get out. So it was not only in his best interest, but it was also in his briefing as such a senior officer to do that. And these things occur every now and then, and it's what they call a contingency. And if
how mad do you have to be to put anything ahead of that level of corruption when children are involved? I mean, how mad you know, think about basically what they're saying to you there, John, is think about the company. Think about the establishment, John. Think of the destruction you could do.
What he said, he said to me, look, I know you're good. And he really praised me. He said, you're the second best officer I've got in the unit. And I've been told never ever lose you. He said you're just very good at what you do. And I wasn't being conceited. I just was naturally very, very good at it. I sort of sussed the equation early on, and it's quite easy. You just work hard and you be nice, and you'll get everything you ever want in life. You know. But he said we never ever thought you'd dig this deep, right? And two kids actually died. It's very serious. So because I refused to back down, there was a campaign then to silence me because the threats were put to me. You lose your home, your job, your children, right? You'll lose your home, your job, your children. Now, my home, because they stopped paying me, I didn't get paid for 3 years, right? My job, I started getting stitched up. So they went through 15 years of my emails. They found that I'd printed off when I was on nights because I couldn't afford anything because I was a single parent. I was skint all the time, and I wasn't taking money. I wasn't corrupted. All I was doing was running a tree surgery business with my oldest son, and I printed off an invoice on the computer, the works computer, one night. So they found this invoice. So they did me for theft. So they said, so I got done for theft of a sheet of A4 paper while I got arrested for it.
That seems like a really good use of the limited budget the police have, John. It seems like a great use of it.
I was told you can't put value on theft, so that's what they did. I told them if ever they tried to take my kids away, I'd burn down Scotland Yard.
I swear to God, I was just about to say you'll burn this whole damn place to the ground.
I did. I said I burn it to the ground. So they decided to have me for that. I threatened to stab a senior detective in the eye with a pen.
My G.
I said, if you give me that pen, I'll sign for my interview. And he was thinking about it. He went,
Yeah.
Okay. I said, yeah. And I said, so once I get a pen, I'll do it. He said, well, what else are you going to do? I said, I'm going to stick it straight in your eye.
Yeah. And this was
And the
before.
look on his face. So I was getting done for that. But one of
Yeah.
the things they did for my friend was one of the best undercover officers I think this country's ever had. He was absolutely brilliant, this guy. He's written a book called Crossing the Line. So if you ever want a real gritty, visceral sort of read his. It's called Crossing the Line by
Okay.
Christian Plowman. This detective, he was brilliant. We worked together many years on a lot of drugs cases and things like that. And he was just awesome. I love the guy. He's still a good friend to this day. But like many undercover officers, he had a nervous breakdown. It was too much for him. So he left and he went to work abroad. And what he did was he contacted me just because he wanted a friend. The BBC were interviewing him about undercover work.
Okay.
So he just wanted to have a chat. Now, he used to, his legend, his altar, as it were, for his thing was he would live a life as a drug addict. So he was covered in tattoos. He had them everywhere, and he would just live on the street. And he had a little Jack Russell dog with him, and he used to even piss his own trousers. He'd urinate his own trousers, and if you saw him, he stank. And he
But he's
lived on.
undercover, right?
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
I'm not being funny. If I would probably actively do things like that as well, just because you can't do that in normal society, and you can get away with it undercover. I know that sounds weird. That's just the intrusive thoughts happening again. I'll shut up now. Sorry, John. Carry on.
Yeah, but he was just brilliant, and so he always used to have a little bottle of methadone on him, and it had the name scrubbed out, which a lot of the street people had, the homeless people would have. They're buying methadone on people.
Yeah.
And I said to him, it was on an email. He said, "How you doing, Wedger?" I said, "Yeah, good." He went, "Be good to meet up for a drink." And I said, "Are you still living as what we call a vagrant?"
A vagrant,
And he went, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "You still got your little bottle of meth?" And he's like, "Yeah, yes." You know, little
You still reek of piss. That would have been the first question, John.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And then he turned around and I said, "Well, let's meet up on a park bench." It's all tongue in cheek.
Well,
I said, you bring the tenant super, you know, the old Vaggie juice, the purple bastard, as they used to call it. You bring the tenant super, I'll bring the methadone, we'll have a cocktail. and this was 5 years prior to this conversation we'd had. They'd found it and they decided then that I'm going to be arrested for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. And they said, right, you're going to get 15 years because we've got the evidence and you will be found guilty. So what I turned around to them and I said, right, well, okay, take me to court. Take me to court. I said, don't interview me because I'll go guilty for everything. I'll admit to it all, but I'm going to go not guilty in court. And I wrote to Cressida Dick, who I think is probably the most corrupt commissioner I've ever had. She's Cressida Dick, the former commissioner.
Question her dick. What is that?
Cressida Dick.
Cressida Dick.
Yeah, the former commissioner of the Metropolitan Police.
That is an unfortunate name.
I called her a liar in court. I called her a liar because she did lie. Anyway, I think she's an appalling individual.
Her name's Cressida Dick. Of course she's an appalling person.
She's honestly...
she was set up to fail from birth, John. Okay, she was destined to be a bitter, bitter woman.
Yeah. She's definitely not a good one. And I said to her, look, I leave the back door open in my house. It doesn't lock. So if you ever want to come round and one second.
Who calls their child Cressida if their last name is Dick? Okay, I'm not being funny. Okay, but if we want to talk about a lesser known form of child abuse, mad names for your kids. Okay, mental names. Okay,
so I told her anytime she wants to, she can come and take away my phone, my data storage devices, everything. I had nothing to hide. I said, I'll go to court. They'll love me. They'll hate you. Well, this went on. You know, I ended up not being defaulting on my mortgage. They ended up wanting my house to get seized. Luckily, the bank came round, and the bank were really good to me. They said, just pay £1 a month. They kept arresting me for different offences. That kept going on. There was 9 in total. The cases went before the Crown Prosecutor to, have me officially put before a court. And the last one was the threat loss of my children. Now, during all this goes on, I'm a single parent of 4 kids. I'm thinking I'm going to prison. I've done absolutely nothing wrong. I've exposed terrible child abuse. 2 of my little children witnesses died in mysterious circumstances. That the main witnesses to the case, which to this day, that caused me a lot of problems emotionally. That did, and then one of one of my children gets involved in a terrible accident. He was a professional sportsman, and he ends up severing his spinal column by 96% and cutting his vertebrae in the top of his neck. He got paralyzed, basically from the eyes downwards. He was in intensive care. He slipped into a coma. He got sepsis. Yeah, one of my boys. He got sepsis. He had a cardiac arrest, and he was declared dead after 10 minutes of not breathing without oxygen. I get called up to the hospital. I've got no money. I'm looking at losing my home. I'm looking at going to prison. And then I'm told by 3 consultants that my son, unfortunately, Mr. Wedger, they said, he's dead. We've lost him. But they got a brain algorithm back. So they put him on full life support. And they can only do it for 5 days, because when you ventilate, and you're doing all the heart stuff to maximum capacity, it just destroys the lungs and the body. So, and he was laying there with pipes, everything. It was awful. I stayed with him for 3 days. This is really where my testimony towards Christianity comes, because I prayed to God, and he actually woke up on the 3rd day, and he's still alive to this day.
Jesus Christ, mate! That I'm telling you, Davina McCall, that. Right till the end. That you had me on the edge of my seat there, dude.
What
I'm
happened?
so glad he's okay. I'm so glad he's okay, John. I've lost a child. I literally watched one of my kids die in my arms, and I swear to God, man, I'm so glad your kid's okay. I'm so glad he's okay.
After 3 days, I was in the chapel praying, and I thought I'm going to go kiss him goodbye and just say goodbye to him. But I called my liaison officer, because I was under investigation and under suspension, and I just said, if the police come anywhere near me, because they're gonna, I've lost my son, I said I'm just gonna bite lumps out of them. I said I will attack them. So she actually told the police to, please be mindful that it's got very worse, progressively worse with him.
And your son's okay now. Like, he's okay. Like,
he's alive. He can walk. He can talk. I'll talk about it a bit more on another occasion. But he made what they call a miraculous recovery.
Dude. I tell you what, if you were not religious before then, that would have sold my ass.
Well, that's what it's done to me. That's what it's done to me. I made a pact with Jesus. I said, "Give me my son, and I'll go and do your work. I'll go and help the children that are lost. I'll be a voice for the voiceless." And that's what I've done to this day.
Big shout out to John's son, man. A big shout out to your son, man. I'm telling you.
Well, it all doesn't stop there. So I leave the hospital after 3 days. I'm absolutely exhausted. I've got no money. I've got no diesel in my car. I don't even know how I got home, because it was in a specialist unit in Cambridge, so it was a long way from London. So I managed to get home, and when I got home, there was 2 detectives waiting for me, and they arrested me for child neglect, because I was a single parent, like I said, of 4 kids. I left my 15-year-old boy at home with my 23-year-old boy, and the Metropolitan Police had told the local officers that I had left my 15-year-old boy starving at home in a state of neglect, which wasn't the case.
Of course.
And they arrested me for child abandonment and child neglect. Luckily,
yeah, John, I'm not being funny. I heard you stole a sheet of paper. All right. Okay. So that you must be a terrible human being, right? Madness, mate.
Well, it was all rubbish. So, but what happened was I just went backing down, and I started speaking out. So I did a radio interview, and I just thought, no, the world's going to know what they're doing, because what they want to do is bully you into silence, so you don't speak out. A bit like anyone who watches this that is a wife beater, they're cruel, callous, damaged people, because that's what they do. They try and bring this air of silence, this conspiracy of silence,
Yeah.
And this is exactly so. You see the same traits in paedophiles, how they silence their victims. You see it in domestic violence perpetrators, very similar, broken individual, damaged traits, very cruel. And you see it in institutions like the Metropolitan Police, maybe the clergy, maybe the military. You see the same thing. They try and demonize you and scare you and frighten you and take away everything you've got. But I ended up with this faith that was unbreakable. And I no longer become frightened of them. And I said, you do what you've got to do. Anyway, it went before I ended up in the newspapers, I ended up on the radio, I ended up on BBC radio and everything. It got out there. People were then asking questions. The CPS heard of it. They threw every single case out. They just threw them out. Said no case to answer. And in the end, the police backed down. But all because I spoke out about high-level corruption of a deliberate attempt to cover up children from care homes being pimped out. And these kids range from 9 to 14 years old, and they were all supporting Class A drug addiction. So can you imagine a 9-year-old's brain when crack cocaine's introduced to it and heroin? It's absolutely destructive. And then utilizing that kid's weakness to their financial benefit by pimping them out and making them have sex with multiple partners at the age of 9. And the police knew about it, and it was involving some people quite high up, and they covered it up. And so I carried on my campaign. I had an MP who was the Minister for Policing and Crime. He's a sir and a right honourable. And he says, right, this is disgraceful. He himself had been in a children's home as a little kiddie. And he said, right, I'm backing you, John. We're not going to have this.
And what happened to him?
So he then holds a meeting with the Home Secretary, and I get called to this meeting. So the Home Secretary's there. There's 6 members of the Home Office there. And Cressida Dick, the former commissioner, she is summoned to attend. She fails to attend. She refuses to attend. And he then lets go this speech, and he said that he had credible information that if I continued on my campaign, and if I hadn't have gone and sought solace from his parliamentary privilege, that I would not be alive to this day, i.e. that the intelligence services were going to do me in, basically. And I challenged him. I said, are you for real? He went, John, I'm telling you, your toe was on that line. And he said,
wow.
Had I not come along, you would have crossed that line. You would have been in a world of trouble, and it would have probably cost you your life. The next day, Theresa May stripped him of his parliamentary role as Minister for Policing. He was no longer the Minister for Policing. They put him in charge of Minister for Pencils or something like that. He was told and warned to stay away from me.
So that's why this corruption runs rife. You see what happens, right? They almost kill off John. They demote his mate. It's a situation where when people try and do anything, you are the mouse against the lion. That is the problem.
But not only that if you come to my assistance, you will get hit. So I was so toxic, no one could come near me. I had 2 colleagues that stood by me, and one of them, his wife got so frightened, she was basically in tears, telling him to withdraw his statement. And at a civil tribunal, I made sure that he didn't attend to give evidence because it was causing too much trouble at home. Another guy, he was from Belfast, and he didn't care. He hated the British establishment. And
do you have any idea, right, the level of involvement throughout the whole legal system that there has to be in place to take place what happened to you, John? This isn't 2 guys on the force downloading dodgy pictures. This is serious.
They have a contingency plan that they roll out when situations like this occur. They have a contingency plan. And we mentioned it when we were on about the army captain from Belfast, from the intelligence regiment, who started looking into the death of Brian McDermott, and then, which was a ritualistic, murder. And they stitched him up with the murder of his wife's of his wife's boyfriend and gave him life. He did 10 years unlawfully for a crime he did not commit. So
See,
this is what will happen. I started bringing together the survivor community. No, I'm not taking full credit, but I did a good job, and I started doing, with the help of people like Sean, James English, and many other podcasters, really got my name out there. And I started myself interviewing victims and survivors, and you know what they went through, and how they were bullied, and how they suffered all their life. And we decided to hold a protest. And I had a 1% biker group contact me and said that they'll provide security for me because they were behind me. We had the retired Gurkha regiment, their little
don't mess with Gurkhas.
colour band, because they have their marching colours and all that. They said they'd turn up. There was the retired guards lot said they'd come. The London taxi drivers offered assistance. The hauliers. It was all going to converge on Parliament, and it was so big. It really took massive momentum. It really was going places. And the intelligence services called me up, what they call SIS, which is like the MI5, MI6 police. They've got this unit called SIS, something intelligence service anyway. They called me up one Saturday, and they basically read me my future and said, right, take it down, cancel it. And I did, because that would have been me done. That would have been me finished. And I don't want to be the man down the well, as a parable goes. I don't want to end up down the well like Wilfred, banged up in prison. What use am I then? Still got kids, and I'm not going to be a martyr like that. So sometimes
what do you say to people, John, right, that turn around and say, no way, there's no way this is real, it's too far-fetched? How conditioned do you find people are to your story? Do you often get a pushback, or do you feel like people have to hide in the comments?
Yeah. I mean, like I said to someone, I said it on Sean Atwood's interview with him. I said, you are never ever proved wrong. Now, there's been a resurgence in interest in my narrative and my work, because what I said when I started doing this 8 years ago has come to fruition. I said there are politicians involved. The government inquiry proved there were politicians involved. It proved that Cyril Smith was involved. It proved that Leon Britton had involvement. It proved that Ted Heath was seriously involved in some very, very dark stuff. It proved it. It came out.
Yeah.
And then you had people like what's his name? It was in charge. Is it Heyman's? The guy that was in charge of MI6. Where ultimately it will stop. He ended up with convictions for paedophilia. The Labour government promoted pro-paedophile group, which Harriet Harman, Patricia Hodge, and Margaret Hewitt all were promoting this pro-paedophile group.
The group that John's talking about wanted to reduce the legal age of consent in the UK to 5.
Yeah, but with the boy, it was a man and a boy to 8. Harriet Harman herself was trying to push it for a girl to be 14. Harriet Harman. One of them people went on, I think Hodge or Hewitt, one of them, Patricia, anyway, Hewitt or Hodge, was made Minister for Children by Tony Blair. We had 5 prime ministers whose political assistants, their right-hand men and women, had convictions or accused of paedophilia.
Yeah.
So I think look, the society's in a strata. A lot of people, they'll sit and watch Celebrity Get Me Out of This and Strictly Come Whatever and Love Island. And it's the opiate of the masses. That they'll football. I can't stand football. I can't stand them silly programs. And they've got no understanding what goes on. When you're in the police, right? I was introduced to a strata, an underclass in society I didn't know existed. I didn't know there were people that lived with dog shite all over their floor and loads of men in and out having sex with them and their own children. I didn't think that sort of went on.
Nah.
But it does. It does go on. And then when I got involved in the organised criminality of child abuse, you started seeing that lords and ladies, peers of the realm, were involved, and were involved in the cover-ups. So I would say just open your eyes. Look, it's all about the karmic debt. They have to tell you what they're doing, and they do it all the time. They've always done it. And then you've got the other thing I never knew went on was satanic ritual abuse. But I grew up in the 70s. I watched Hammer House of Horror. Christopher Lee, the former SAS soldier turned actor of many a Hammer House production, and he usually always played the antagonist, is interviewed and said, "Is this real?" And he said, "I'm telling you now, if you mess with the occult, you will lose your mind and you will lose your soul. You must stay away from it." Clearly speaks out over it, and we're seeing now celebrities coming forward like Bob Dylan and many other saying that they went to the devil. Nicki Minaj, there's loads of them. Katy Perry, they're saying they sold their soul to the devil. Look at Alice Cooper, born again Christian, they're saying what I was involved in was demonic, and I knew it was demonic. So you never prove wrong. You never prove wrong, but you get a lot of damaged people that get caught up in conspiracies. I won't do that. I have done. I've been around people that are obsessed with conspiracies, a lot of damaged people, some survivors. I will never, ever get caught up in that again, because it takes away the credibility and it can make a farce of your argument. You need to be factually based. And unfortunately,
100% when it comes to serious topics, for sure.
Well, when there's crime, when there's street crime, right?
When there's kids involved, man, I'll be honest, I love a conspiracy. I love the free thought of it all, but there is a line where what we're discussing is I wish this was a conspiracy. This is one I wish was made up and we're all blowing smoke up your arse. But the realities of a global PDF file, syndicate that stretches politicians, the police, the infrastructure of civilized society is the reality.
And it's the glue that holds them together. So the police, you'll get corruption, and you'll get secret societies, you'll get Freemasonry, which will have a hold. There is an oath there that people will adhere to. There's a code, and there will be a brotherhood network that will go out their way to help each other. And if that is a corruptible connection, a corruptible relationship, and these people meet up, and there was a guy told me that he was at a Masonic meeting, and my superintendent and my chief superintendent were discussing about stripping me of my detective status as another form of punishing me. He was there and he overheard it at a Masonic meeting. This is how the people know each other. And then if you take it a step further with a satanic connection, then you've got a blood bond, a stronger bond. So there are these wheels within wheels, and if you don't think they go on, then you're wrong. Firstly, you are wrong, and secondly, you are very, very naive. Even special branch monitor occult groups. They monitor them. They monitor satanic groups. They monitor devil worship. They even monitor, they call them cults, and they even see like the 1% biker groups as cults as well, and they have monitors. They do it. I've been at a training seminar with special branch, and they told me I was working with a special branch officer who told me that they monitor it, and we had that intelligence guy was saying that MI5 actively were going out there to satanic ritual sites. That's and right. Trying to destroy them, so the credibility of it didn't come out. So you're naive and you're wrong if you don't think it goes on. But again,
the only thing that I think is wrong, right, is I think it's older than the devil and Satan and Christianity. I think we use the word satanic because I think that's where that's kind of like the worst possible case. And when people see big horned red effigies, that's where we go, is the devil. But I think it's older, darker, nastier, and way more evil than that. I mean, I really do. I think this is way before 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, I get you right. It is. It's ancient worship.
Yeah.
And
that's not me criticizing or saying any survivors are wrong at all, just to be clear. It's just...
But I want to say something. Look, the police now, we mentioned this earlier, they rely on CCTV to back up any allegation made by a victim of crime. And a lot of the time when someone's getting their head smashed in, they haven't got the wherewithal to start filming it and everything else. It's just not going to be a reality. So unless there's a doorbell that's going to capture it, unless you're lucky enough to live in inner London where there's 15 cameras on every single bus, you know, they solve murders. Mobile phones and buses solve murders. But in absence of them, years ago, they would knock on the doors and they would do a bit of profiling and do a bit of digging, and they put a case together. They don't do it now because, firstly, their supervisors don't know how to do it. They're lazy. They're instructed not to do it, and the trade craft has gone because people like me and many others have left. Now,
you know, that's funny. I was just going to ask you how do the police force feel about ring cams and all these things? If the corruption is, how many police officers now have to monitor how they act because of CCTV?
All of them, all of them. If I just go to say that when it comes to historic child abuse, only 2%, and that's back in the day when they're tenacious individuals that would investigate. 2% of them would result in prosecution in the Crown Court. 2%. So that doesn't say 98% are lying. Because it's rare for any child to lie that this goes on. It does happen, but it's rare. It is rare, right? And you don't tend to have the privilege of someone raping a child on the top deck of a bus on rush hour when there's witnesses. It goes on in private, and unfortunately, a lot of survivors of real compounded abuse have got mental health problems and trauma and things like that. And some may go on to commit crimes because of addiction, and that would class them then if they go shoplifting as people of dishonesty. So it's stacked against them. But going back to what you're saying about evidence capturing devices, right? And the police have these things now on these body worn cams, and custody suites are just littered with them. Back when I joined the police, no,
of course. And I mean, what was the time period for yourself, John?
The early 90s.
The early 90s.
I joined with people that had joined in the 60s, you know, so, and they'd seen the glory days of the 70s. So one police station, they denied that prisoners got beat up, yet they had a wall that was covered in blood. It had blood splatters.
Can I ask you a weird question? Do you feel like the 90s, because I feel like the 60s, 70s, and 80s was the era of the weird scout leader that would, you know, grab your arse over a wall, but he was just the weird scout leader, guys. I feel like the 90s is when the people started paying real attention to non-obvious abuse. You know, it wasn't over years, it was horrible abuse, but we're talking about the subtle abuse, you know, the weird scout leader, the sort of the weird guy with the mustache and the overcoat, and those sort of faux pas started to be eradicated.
Well, they never took it seriously. When they started getting the inquiries and they looked at homelessness, drug addiction, and you know, it doesn't take a genius to work out that most of them came from sexual abuse, and there was a massive surge in putting kids into care post-war because there was a lot of problems after the war, and there was a lot of single mums, there was a lot of women with issues that couldn't look after their kids because of the destruction that war caused. So from the 50s, 60s and 70s, kids went in and they got abused massively.
So you joining in the 90s, right? Do you think if you were to join now, they would allow you in based off of how you would be too good of a policeman, if you see what I'm saying? I
would see things. One things I would bring in would be profiling. Now, you said something really interesting, and we have covered this. When it comes to like Wayne Couzens, so you said about the man in the Mac. Now, one thing that profiling sex offenders shows you that some things aren't that obvious.
There is no profile, John. There is no profile. That's the problem with these children ones.
Well, there isn't. But so, look, a man who flashes his penis, right? A flasher, the dirty Mac brigade that we mentioned, right? They are the most impulsive and dangerous sex offenders they are. They will go from flashing their knob to a lone female to murdering that woman in a heartbeat based on her reaction and the opportunity of the environment around her, the spatial awareness. If there's no one there, they're going to kill that woman, right? And that's something that profiling taught me. Now, when I heard that this copper was suspected of flashing and was actually warned about flashing and all that, I said to my mate, he's a murderer. He would have killed that girl. It's him. He's a murderer. And he went, how do you know? I said, I'm telling you now because he's a flasher. The police know about this because on the specialist unit I was on, we did a lot of training with the National Crime Agency, the National Crime Squad, as was back then. And one of the things was that they had a profiler that I would go and work with out based in Cork in Southern Ireland. And he would review a lot of my cases and he would give me interview strategies. And I learned a lot from this fella. And subsequently, I've worked with Corinne Hutzterbart, who's on the FBI's top 10 profiling list. And, you know, but even back there, they were saying flashers are so dangerous. Knickers, people who steal the underwear, and flashers will go from what's deemed a minor crime to the most heinous crime in a heartbeat.
Why do you think that is? Why
why
do you
was
think that is?
profiling not brought in?
Because we're not, John, you remember who you're talking to. I know the answer to this question, okay? So why would they want to bring in profiling if it would reduce their ability to feast on children? Okay, they're not going to put in anything in place that's going to eradicate their massive pool of abuse. Sadly, sorry to give you a really harsh and to the point answer.
And of course, you think of how much time can be saved if they brought in polygraph testing, you know, with a 99% accuracy, whatever it is, you know, and then you get these clever wordsmith barristers, you know, that will, you know, people like Michael Mansfield, who made his career as if he couldn't attack the information, he would attack the source of the information. So if the information said that their client did it, he'd think, well, okay, well, let's attack the source then. Let's say, well, it comes from someone who's a liar, who's this, who's that. So,
whilst you're talking about attacking, what happened to your son? Did that happen before or after you voiced your opinion on the police force?
It happened afterwards. It happened, and it was during the whistleblowing stage. So it was soon after I blew the whistle, and it was during when they were really going for me, when they were nicking me really for.
I mean, are we thinking the same thing here? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, it was an accident. I don't think there was anything.
Of course, it's going to be. Yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm telling you, man. If I win the lottery, man, we'll just take them all out. Okay, we'll take them all out and retire at the Bahamas.
Yeah, well, there's nothing I would put past. My old boss was the senior investigating officer for the Diana inquiry, and he said to me once, "If anyone thinks that was an accident, they're retarded."
Look, I'm not being funny. We're talking about the most interwoven, evil, occult-based, ancient group of people, okay, that are they're interwoven throughout everywhere they need to be to keep the taps of child abuse running.
Of course.
And this wasn't an overnight thing. This has been a plan for a long time. And when you start realizing that this is all true, you got to remember that the people at the top of the police, the judges, all these people aren't at the top of the PDF file pyramid. They are at the pawn level. The people at the top of this pyramid, I mean, we are far.
They will have people that are pathologists that will deal with the autopsies.
Yeah.
That they will have doctors that will turn up. They will have their police officers that are. See, the police is compartmentalized. So a normal uniform copper could not investigate organized child pimping. He wouldn't be allowed to. It'd be out of his remit. The crime reporting system wouldn't allow him to manage that crime. His sergeants wouldn't. He'd have to be specially trained. He'd have to be on a unit like me. So when we were on this special unit, all them cases came to us. Within that unit, there was 2 of us working on it for London, and they said there wasn't a problem. You know, we found 10 victims in 10 minutes once. 10 victims in 3 days. I found 50 50 child victims that were being pimped out. And there was so our boss, he had to be briefed and he had to be put in this position where it stops with him. It stops solely with him. And this is what happened. And every now and then there's people like me that sort of work the algorithm out, get through the net, and start doing my job. And that's when we become dangerous, and we've got to be hit hard.
Dude.
And if we don't listen, then we're punished, and if we don't listen, still we're taken out.
Yeah. Just the only comparison I can make to the levels of sophistication and corruption that the PDF file network has is there's a website, right, which I'm not going to say the name of, which has been my nemesis for like almost 8 years. It's on the dark web, and it's the biggest PDF file group there is. John, we are talking 6 million members. Okay, we are talking parents who abuse their kids, people that want to buy content, people making content. And I just want to summarize where I'm getting my point. Allegedly, it was easier to hack our own government's mainframes than it was to enter this website. Just for a second, allegedly, if someone was to try and do anything illegal, okay, don't try, but allegedly if someone had, our government servers were easier to gain access to than this freaking website. What does that tell you about the volunteer?
Well, let's go another way. I wasn't a dedicated officer for this. I was like a secondee, and there was 2 of us looking at the whole of London for child prostitution. It was such a big problem, and kids were dying, right? They had more officers on a transphobic crime unit, and transphobic crime accounted for 0.0001% of all reported crimes. I don't think they even had a reported crime of transphobia, yet they had dedicated officers. I think they had 4 of them on it. And I went before the commissioner, this liar that she is. I went before her, and it was meant to be a meeting, just me and her. It ended up with me there, and she was sat like Queen Bee around a big table with 9 other women, and I think they were all in the same club, as it were, as much as I can say about that one. And I turned around to her and I said, listen, I said, I can take a child out of care home, can groom that child, I can drug that child, I can have sex with that child. I can then do the same to that child's friend and encourage her friend to get another friend and them to keep doing it, right? And I can then take them kids and pimp them out and make money, and you have not got one dedicated officer to deal with that. But if I was to lean over my fence and call my neighbour a derogatory name for someone from Central Asia, for example, I said, it begins with a P, I said, you would have me out my home, arrested, remanded, and on a register before the end of that day. I said, how is that right? And
well, if you were part of a gang that likes doing that to kids, it makes perfect sense, John. It only makes perfect sense when you realize.
Well, after the expose that occurred, that unit was shut down. They never looked at another case of child prostitution, pimping out, trafficking of kids, whatever, until Jimmy Savile got exposed. So 7 years elapsed before they had a dedicated officer to deal with it. 7 years. And that shows the value they put on children, society's most vulnerable. And we've had this so many times.
Yeah, but it took the finding of a super P word, the mother of all P words, before they even put a couple of officers in. You see, this is the madness, John. If Savile hadn't been caught or it hadn't come out, it wouldn't have changed.
But if we look at what happened with Elm Guest House, which was a guest house in a posh suburb of South affluent posh southwest London, and it was a male brothel for young boys. And like I said, you had members of Parliament. Cyril Smith was one of them. You had Nicholas Fairbairn in charge of the Scottish judiciary. the solicitor depute he was in charge of the whole of the Scottish. He was visiting there for its young boys. The intelligence services, the head of that was reputed to be involved in it. You know, and the huge scandal that was Elm Guesthouse. You know, the high up of our judiciary, of our political realm, were going in there and were basically raping young boys.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen.
And it was covered up.
Listen, all I'm going to say is I'm going to nip to the toilet, and when I come back, I'm going to play an advert for the Nico series. It takes less than 3 minutes. Then when we come back, you're going to tell us 2 stories about policemen who've actually done their job really well. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my mind. Okay, just give us a little bit of hope, John. That there's a couple of good officers out there, please, because I'm telling you now, John, I'm ready to literally go and get a van and duct tape and go on a vigilante rampage right now. It's been a while since I've been this triggered. I'm not going to lie. And you are one of the few people who know the reality, the facts, and the how high up this goes. That you do it to me every time, mate. I'm not going to lie. Right, 2 minutes and 42 seconds. Okay, this is a new true crime series, 3-part series that I have got coming for you, lovely, lovely people on the Sean Atwood channel. He is a murderer. He is a cannibal. He is also allegedly a vampire. He is Nico, and here is the trailer. Check it out.
I was living with one foot on the other side of the grave, and I was under the shadow of death for all my life, as far as I can remember. Even as a child, I was obsessed with graveyards. When I was a very small child, I was obsessed with stories of vampires and things I saw on television. When I grew up and became a young teenager, those thoughts became less rational, and maybe I lost grasp with reality at some point. Walking inside graveyards and trying to find ways to get inside crypts, and walking down the catacombs and being surrounded by those skulls and the smell of decay around me and all those things, I didn't feel ill or sad or depressed. I felt that I was somewhere where I belonged. Like many sociopaths, I'm a control freak. I like to control my immediate surrounding, because if I don't control my immediate surrounding, I lose balance. So it's important for me to control everything more or less. Having control helps me not to fall into that dark pit.
Okay, the next week you'll get a solid release date for this. But again, what a fascinating individual Nico Klaus is. You know, you're a policeman. You can obviously, I'm sure a lot of police have interesting takes on reformed criminals, or people who commit crimes and often have a weird cult following and things like this. Nico's definitely one of those people, and he is a very interesting guy. Done 12 years, he was sentenced in the 90s, done 12 years for the murder, came out, and became an artist, became an author. And you know what I'm like? I like talking to people who, for no reason, are just different from all of us. Serial killers and things like this. There's a subcategory of, even when I was doing the Predator research and learning how they operate, there is this fascination I have when there's no catalyst to create trauma. There is just a wire somewhere that's different. You know, I've met a man who was the only serial killer that I've ever met that never planned to be a serial killer, never planned to kill anyone, but killed over 70 women who were rude to him. And they were rude. And if there was ever a boogeyman about being polite and minding your manners, it's Delmas Colvin. Okay, just look him up. It's not even morbid curiosity. It's, I'm fascinated with how I can be born, have a great childhood, a great upbringing, and be into like expensive cardboard collectibles and stupid nonsense. Like there's freaking 2 lightsabers over there. I'm 40. Do you know what I mean? But then the other guy,
everyone loves Star Wars.
Do you know what I mean? But then the other guy, if you happen to wake him up in a truck stop, fair enough, 4 or 5 times she woke him up. But on the 5th time, she was in and she was dunzo. And do you know what he said to me, John?
Oh.
He started trafficking the white powder, tons of it, because there was already a couple of dead chicks in the back of the van anyway. Do you know what I mean? So what's the point? Not the van, the big mega lorries with the big things on the back, the big long distance ones. But I'm telling you now, you could meet this guy in a bar and be lifelong friends from that one meeting, John. He is so, within 5 minutes, you will forget you're talking to a serial killer in Supermax. It's fascinating.
I had a partner in the police, and he was in one of the special forces regiments, and he went on one day about killing, and I said, "How'd you deal with it?" It goes the back of my head and it stays there, and that was his. And he could just blank anything out. He could just totally blank a situation out and get over it with no remorse at all. But no, that's just how it was.
See, I know, right, that if someone pushes me to a certain level, I'm capable of almost anything, right? But I'm very aware of morals and, you know, never using your power for the bad and trying to use it for good. Do you see what I mean? Even when I was like getting bullied and things like this in high school, I never cared. I never really fought back at anything. But anyone time talked about my mum, they got their face smashed in. But it's a weird concept. Because
the guy who helps me out a lot, he's a former heavyweight world champion.
Yeah,
and he's just a professional fighter. That's what he is. But he is just a solid Christian, absolutely. But he will die fighting for the cause of Jesus, and he will take out a Satanist because that's what he wants to do, because he hates them with a vengeance. And he is the loveliest, kindest, nicest guy. But he is severely dangerous when he's on a mission and his back gets up. He's absolutely deadly, hard as nails. Former world champion.
Yeah.
And
listen, man,
you see it when you meet him.
Have you ever heard of a guy called oh God, oh come on, brain, come on, I can't remember his name. He is I'll save this one for next week. It's a whole new era of vigilante predator hunter on a new platform called Kick. Okay. Right. And we're talking about streamers with tens of millions of followers finding a pedo, grooming them into a situation to abduct them in a van, take them back to a house, shave all their hair off, make them act like dogs, all of this stuff. And then they send them back off into the wild because the police apparently will not deal with any vigilante predator hunter cases in the state they're in. How do you feel about that? Because they're making a lot of money from this. Remember, they're making a lot of money. How do you feel about it? Do we need that? Because I feel
I think it's getting to that stage. Look, but you have to do things in a balanced, disciplined way. And, you know,
but are the opposition doing things in a balanced, disciplined way.
Some are, yeah.
But
Some
I
are,
think that the
some aren't.
corruption and this system is far. But in
Yeah,
saying that, I'm
I mean, look,
I'm the wrong
it
guy.
depends. Look, if you get a sex offender and you know that they know others, now you can beat them up and they're not going to admit to anything. You're going to jeopardize your case. You're probably not going to win your case for your victim.
Yeah. Well, there's no
And he ain't gonna
violence.
assault you.
There's no
Well,
violence. I will say that it's humiliation.
But if you deal with them rightly, respectfully, and send them away for double figures, and rightly so they rot in, and then
Yeah.
every now and then visit them and try and get information about other paedophiles,
Yeah.
then that one paedophile can easily give you 5 other paedophiles who can
Yeah,
educate you on how it works.
an incredibly
Smash their
educated.
face in. They're going to hell anyway, these people.
Yeah, that's
They're
an
in the
incredibly
world of trouble.
educated and grown-up response to what is
Yeah.
typically, I'll just get a big group out with my hammers, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
I get.
Well,
I get what
you're
you're
going to
saying.
end up sharing a cell next to him, aren't you, if you do that?
Well, that's
you know.
the thing, man, and it's going to be a horrible sell, and the book will be thrown at us and all the rest of it. That's why I done all my investigations on the internet and didn't have to meet these people in person, John.
Well, one of my victims, I told her about a guy that if he had an issue with someone, he would go around and smash their face in, and then he'd beat up their mum and their dad who's giving birth to them.
Right, that's taking it a bit far, mate. Relax with the mum
because
beatings.
He was a traveller, he was a fighting man, and he said, look, Johnny said, and he was a real big tough guy, and he said, I can't blame that individual for being a tosser 100% because his mum made him and his dad made him. They need to take the blame and be responsible, he said, because if you had a dog and it bit someone, it would be your fault, not just the dog's fault. And I said, okay. And then he said, I need to smash their mum and dad up for creating them. And that's what he did. Anyway, I told this story to a survivor of abuse. And what she did, she sort of took it to heart. So after hearing that, she went out on a birthday party with her mate. She'd now turned 17. This had occurred when she was about 5, but she came forward when she was 16. And it took 2 years to go through the court. And she decided, I think that man John knows is a good guy. So she decided to go around to her abuser's house. When he opened the door, she smashed him in the face with a brick, right? She then bricked his windows, and then she went and smashed his mum in the face with a brick. And that's what she did. And she got arrested. And when I went to deal with her in the police station, she said, John, I only did what you told me to do.
Oh, wow. See, listen, I just want to say, at no point do John and I condone any violence, any vigilantism. I'm not saying this because of YouTube at all. We cannot condone, promote, encourage any of you to glorify violence towards anyone, no matter how evil they are. It's definitely not a good idea to do anything like that, okay?
But every now and then, when I was on the river police, bodies would turn up in the Thames, and it was surprising how many of them were registered sex offenders. You know.
No! What a shame!
You know that, but did they slip on a banana skin and fall over the bridge? Maybe that's what happened. You know.
Maybe there's a. Do you know? I often wonder, right? Do you ever watch Dexter when it was on years ago?
Well, I knew of it. I never watched it, but yeah, I know
it was about a serial killer whose dad was a cop and knew his son was going to turn out to be a serial killer, and taught him to be a good serial killer. So he became a blood splatter expert for the police, and he would only go after really horrible people. So you fell in love with this character. You fell in love with Dexter, right? What do you think? What are the likelihood that there's a real Dexter out there?
Well, I interviewed a guy,
right?
And he was a shoplifter. It was when I was lower down in the CID, but then he disclosed to me he was a real character.
Yeah,
he was well known on the area, on the division, on the manor, whatever, as being this prolific shoplifter, and a bit of a pain, really. And one day,
as soon as you say that, did he have his trousers tucked into his socks?
No, well, he might have done, you know. He might, but anyway, what he did, I started talking to him and got to know the guy, and he said, "Look, I'm on the heroin because I was abused. My dad abused me, and he started talking to me about how I parent my children, my boys." And I said, I'd never hurt them like that. I maybe shout at them, but I don't hit my kids. Yeah. And I do a lot with my kids, but I would never, you know. And he said, what? he thought it was normal, you know, as he was growing up. And I said, no, it's not normal. It's wrong. Why? It's the most disgusting thing. Why you know, a dad would ever do that to their own child, the essay of their own child.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, it is wrong, isn't it? And I went, it's really wrong. And he went, yeah, my dad was terrible what he did to me. And he sort of opened his heart about what he did. So I didn't realise the full impact of our conversation. So he gets bail because he didn't really qualify for it, but he was good as gold. And he said, I'll turn up court if you bail me. So I bailed him. He went home. He went to his dad's house, and his dad let him in, and he got a pencil and he shoved it through his dad's eye right into his dad's brain and killed him. He killed his dad with a pencil. And he ends up at the Old Bailey, and I get called to give evidence, and he's there on a murder trial, and I get called regarding our conversation.
Yeah.
And as I walked in, he's like that, all right, Johnny boy. And his name was Brian, and I said, hello, Brian. And his solicitor said, how did you get on with my client? I said, I'm going to be honest, I really liked him. And he went, well, he speaks very highly of you.
Brilliant.
And his evidence was, it's wrong what he did. And, you know, and he didn't drag me into it to say, oh, because of John, I went and stabbed my dad in the eye. But, you know, just enough was enough. And I was asked what was my opinion of him. I said, no, he was a really nice guy. And you know, and did I have any remorse for his father? Well, not really. Not really. I couldn't advocate that. And I hope I didn't advocate that. You know, maybe his dad repented and put right. But I never lost an ounce of sleep for.
It's too funny.
For what,
it's too funny. Like how many dead predators are there with really chuffed, like convicted, happy, like murderous people that are like, yep, good day. Also, Shane, share the Discord link. Share the Discord link, and we'll share the links in there. It's too. We've got to be even beyond more sensitive. You didn't do anything wrong, Shane. Don't worry. Just share the Discord link and then share the link in there.
I'm going to write that down because I'm writing my book and I forgot that little anecdote. I think that needs to go in the book, so there'll be more information in the book. But you asked me about two good guys, and I've got two guys, and I want to shout these two men out. These are what you call heroes, and they really put their life on the line, and their reputation and their careers. And I think there's nothing more admirable than stand up for society's most vulnerable, and that's children. I'm not interested in the flying squad because they just collect debts for the bank. They just went out there for bookmakers and banks, and bookies and banks can stick it. I don't care for them. So I don't see flying squad officers as good as they were at what they did as being police heroes at all. 90% of murders solve themselves. They're done by people who know them. And they pretty much, now with phones, near enough every single murder gets solved. It's got the highest clear-up rate of any crime going. So my focus is going to be on those that investigate horrific crimes against children.
Yeah.
And these are people that took this to the level I did and higher. So the first one is a bloke called Lenny Harper. Lenny Harper was a high-ranked officer. So for a high-ranked officer to go against that hierarchy, that takes some doing. I was just a grunt, you know, on the lower rung of the high ladder that is promotion. Now, Lenny was up with the gods, and he was asked to look at an investigation regarding a kids' home called Haute de la Garenne in Jersey, where kids weren't just abused, they were murdered, and they were ritualistically murdered. And he went out there, and it involved the most perverted cover-ups you've ever seen. Jersey has got a feudal system. So Jersey,
that's one of the islands, right? That's one of the islands.
Channel Islands. They've got a feudal system. So the landowners have the right of governance over the people. So what they have is a police force, which is based on our British policing system, but it also has the honourable police service, which are the landowners' children, which are given every rights of a constable without having to do any training. They're given warrant cards. They're given. There was
I'm
even
sorry,
one.
is this the Wild West with sheriffs? I mean, that's what it sounds like, right?
Well, it's a feudal system, yeah. And the cover-ups on this, because once the children are taken from the mainland to these islands, where they're going to go? They're stuck in there. There was allegations of torture, that they were tied up, manacled in a basement, and there were murders. And he actually, what the establishment had done, because the information was leaking out, they'd filled the basement with sewage. He got the sewage pumped out, and he cleaned it up. He found the bath, he found the handcuffs, he found human skull, children's skulls.
Wow.
He found blood splatters. He got the best dogs in the world to determine that was a cadaver, that it come from a human. Later, Kate McCann and her beautiful husband got the dogs discredited and ruined that whole investigation because they discredited the dog. So those, they'll rot in hell, the McCanns, in my opinion.
Listen, that's a whole follow-up show. It's been a while since we had a McCann run.
And I've got some information that I'm going to seek legal advice before I share it. But
please, for the love of God, do. Okay.
It shows them in a different light. I've got a witness that's come to me.
Not too much, John. Just leave them wanting more. Don't give them too much, John.
But anyway, Lenny Harper, he takes this case on and he fights against the whole of the Jersey system. Even the minister for Jersey.
You think he'll come on and speak to us? You get him on,
I think he will. Lenny, I'll give you his contact details.
See if you can get him on for one of the Thursdays. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I'll speak to him. And what Lenny did was he got it identified, the skull, by an anthropologist. It got sent off, and it come back, and they diverted it from a lab to a different lab. The exhibit bags have been tampered with, and the result was it's coconut shell. They discredited him. He nearly got arrested. He managed to get off the island before they got a warrant for him. And I've lost your sound there, Ron.
No, sorry, I was just sending a voice note, mate. Now carry on, I'm listening to you.
All right. So, but he went on to Sky News and he showed the world that this abuse and ritual abuse went on in this place.
Yeah,
so,
we need to get as many of these people that you know that want to speak.
And the second one.
Yeah, the second one. Come on, let's go.
So Lenny Harper gave me the impetus. He stood by me. I went to see him. And Lenny Harper said to me, John, what you're investigating is the same as me, and it will go to the heart of the British establishment. So that was his wise words to me, and I don't think he was wrong in that summation. The other one is a guy you can't get higher than this. This is a chief constable. A chief constable. He is up with the gods. And so for a chief constable to speak out, I don't think it's ever occurred.
How give us, because just first imagine I'm a 5-year-old who doesn't know how high up a chief constable is. How high up we talking?
He's in charge of a police force, so he's like the commissioner of the Metropolitan. He was the chief constable for I can't say that. He was chief constable for Wiltshire. Now Wiltshire was the home of Ted Heath, right? So he took on the investigation of Ted Heath as a child murderer and a child rapist and a Satanist. He went on to Sky News to say that he had evidence that Ted Heath was involved in satanic ritual abuse, child murder and child rape, right? The R word. Oops.
Yeah.
And
mate, listen, we have been running rife tonight with the proper words. So don't worry.
Yeah. So anyway, he thought they really went for him. The government went for him at the highest possible level. I think his life may have been at risk, but he stood his ground, and they tried to destroy him. And I think they sort of damaged him in many ways, but he would not back down. He would not back down, and I would say that he really takes surprise for the bravest officer, because he fought them at the highest possible level, and for a chief constable to do that. And not only that, he's a really, really nice guy. So Mike Field.
Mike.
Yeah. What a man. You can Google him. He turned around and said that our Prime Minister that took us into Europe was a paedophile. and he would not.
So I actually think a good direction to take this series, if we can, is maybe do a whole 3 or 4 weeks, John, where we bring in other people who have put their life online like you have, and give them the platform. I mean, we get heavily suppressed on this channel as it is, so we can do our best. I mean, to give you an example, John, we've got over 700 people watching on Twitter right now, right, compared to the suppressed 167 on Sean Atwood's YouTube channel. I mean, it blows my mind just how suppressed a lot of the content is, and who better to suppress than John Wedger if you're part of the machine, right? I mean, come on. So listen, I'll be honest, I never even realized that we're approaching almost 2 hours 20 minutes, John, and it's just another. I mean, you've really triggered me tonight. Like, if there was ever, this is the closest I've been in a long time to just starting up some really dark, evil, anti-predator Discord, and just don't do it, guys. This, I'm just metaphorically speaking.
I think that the mark of success is that you speak out for the vulnerable and you're still alive to do it. And you're not in prison, and you're alive. And I think if that happens, then you've succeeded. You've made it. So,
Facebook viewers, I salute you. Okay, did I forget how many to see? There is 10 as well.
Does that cat count as one of the 10? Or
that cat definitely counts as one of the 10. I'm counting it. Okay, I'm definitely counting it. So yeah, just to show you the example, I'm sure that if you, I mean, again, this channel's been around for 9 years. I guarantee you at least 40,000 people of these subscribers have died of natural causes, right? But I'm pretty sure the Sean Atwood fan base is very interested in this type of content, and it's very interesting what content I do on this channel that the algorithm pushes out every time, John. Every day, 12:30, my royal news flash show where we read headlines and talk about Meghan Markle. The notifications are sent out every day. They come up on my phone. My mum watches. Okay, can't imagine anybody got a ping for Wedger. Okay, that's all I'm saying. But that's the way it goes.
There's a little prediction. I don't think we'll see Kate Middleton again.
Oh, that's Catherine, right? Princess Catherine. Oh no! Listen, John. I can't talk about this. Okay, I have a royal commentary news show, okay, and a big podcast on a Friday. We'll talk about this on my channel, okay, because I've got some mother flipping theories, John. Okay, mother flipping theories, okay. So yeah, we'll do that in a place where, and that's a big chat. That's a big chat for a big live stream.
Well, you've just got to look at that. Portrait of Charles when they've inverted it, and you've got Baphomet and
listen, I'm going to say the same thing to you as I've said to everyone. If you go to parts of Indonesia, you're going to see a lot of swastikas. Okay, does that mean they're all Nazis? No, it means a symbol that meant one thing was hijacked by a bad group. Okay, and if you track the Baphomet or the goat-headed man way back thousands and thousands of years, pre-devil, pre-Jesus, pre-Islam, pre-Judaism, okay, it stood for a very different thing. And I'm not saying big goat-headed dudes that are half man, half woman aren't weird looking. I get it. But we really need to stay factual. And when we go back in history, it was another case of the hijacking of a symbol and a deity that came long after this, the persecution of anything that was in Islam, Judaism, or Christianity. And we don't have to agree on anything, just saying, John, but it's an interesting story that particular deity has, and it's a fascinating one. And
he's meant to be head of the Church of England. I think maybe that's a conflict of interest.
Here, speaking about weird things and conflict of interest, did you know how rich our Prime Minister is?
Well, his missus anyway.
Dude, the guy is minted, okay? I've got a real problem with guys who are multi-millionaires thinking they can relate to the normal person.
Well, we never voted for him anyway.
we don't get to vote in this country anymore. They just go changing the prime minister and then they roll a dice. No, that's too much credit. A sea lion comes in and rolls a large foam dice, and that's how they check a prime minister in the UK. How we get our leaders elected and child abusers are the two things that get me most wound up, and people that believe the official 9/11 story. Those three things, John, rattle my cage.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you. So,
okay, listen. I think this has been a fantastic show. I think there's definitely, I can see 10 shows that are going to be great on the Sean Atwood channel, and another 10 shows that people are going to demand that we'll do on my channel. We'll still do it on Sean's Twitter and Sean's Facebooks and things like this. But we've got to protect the mothership. And I want to talk to you about some things that are definitely on the mega ban list, just so you know. And we'll do it, like I say, we'll do it on my channel, because does this face look bothered? Does it look bothered? But we've got to protect the mothership. So yeah, listen, John, you're amazing. I just want to say it's been way too long. Thank you everyone for watching. Please share this, because as we're at over 900 now, 182 on YouTube and 730 on. Oh, don't forget the Facebook people. It's still 10 people on Facebook. So yeah, I think. Say that again. And one cat. Yeah, exactly. So I just want to say thank you all for being here. This is definitely getting demonetized because John and I have just been running amok with the R words and the P words and the M word. I mean, we've indulged in words you won't be hearing for a while, because sadly we're going to have a whole generation that grow up getting educated in their news, and their pastime is YouTube. And we have whittled down some of the worst crimes in the world to a letter so that we don't offend advertisers. And in my opinion, that is an insult to every survivor by diminishing what truly happened to them, by simplifying a term. I do not agree with it, but sadly, it's what we have to do to play the YouTube game. I'll bet you £1 we're demonetized. It's okay, because it's John's first night back, all right? And if we want to say some crazy words, one night we can do it, all right? But I think we should really try and work on giving your other friends some voices as well, because...
I'm going to send some messages. And Lenny, I think, should be okay. Mike, I don't know. I've not spoken to him.
You can let them know.
They did some pretty awful things, but... You know, when you mess with the government, you're in big trouble. You know,
that's what I'm saying. Like, even if they want to frame it as a voiceless, nameless, anonymous, speaking through a voice changer, fully like anonymous, we can do that too. I'll just clip off the bit of the stream where I explain.
There's a guy who's speaking out about stuff at the moment, and I just warned him. I said, just be careful, mate. You know, if you've got a family and all that, I said, don't underestimate the government. Don't get cocky and think you can walk through, because the UK government, they're the masters of espionage. They'll take you out of the picture in a heartbeat, and they will do it. You know, be careful.
I mean, let's be honest. You're just lucky who your pals were, or you'd be gone, John. Like, I hate to put it bluntly to you, but that is literally the case. Like, if you hadn't met a couple of people, we wouldn't be sat here talking right now.
Yeah,
and that's the fact.
Right. Yeah, no, there's been it's my man. There's been some good ones that have really helped me. I think the one thing that helped me was getting the story out there. Getting the story out there. The UK column gave me the first platform. I think that saved me. I genuinely think that saved me.
Yeah.
And then I've done a lot with Sean, and I'm very careful not to run my mouth and start threatening and accusing. And I want to keep it as factual as I can. The ritual abuse stuff, I tend to try and rely on cases and things like that and people's experiences, but there's not much on it really. It's still quite hidden. But you see a lot of people, they run their mouth, they just get in a world of trouble. And you know, the main thing is we must keep being where we are. I always take sort of guidance from that film Schindler's List. You know, he could have.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How he did it, how that, you know, he ran with the hare and he hunted with the hounds. And I think that's what we've got to do when we do these things. You know, we can't just stand up for one thing and then you get shut down. You know, you can do a lot of good by having your freedom and having your liberty And if there's some things you just can't go there, or you have to apologise, and then do it. So be it. Don't make it a pride issue. You know, the main thing is we keep educating people and keep it credible, and be of some service. And I like to think that we are a service. I get messages all the time. I get approached in the street by people saying, "Thank you for speaking out. Thank you. It's given us, us survivors hope and things like that." So I want to keep doing it, and I want to keep doing it, and I love the cohesion that I have with the podcasters and hosts, like yourself, like Sean and a few others. And
John, we're ride or die now, mate. Like we're in this now. Like I'm telling you, we're not going to start a vigilante group. Okay, stop intrusive thoughts. Stop the intrusive thoughts. I mean, I'm just saying, you're awesome. Thank you for giving up your time again. I'm getting way too triggered to keep inside the intrusive thoughts, John. So we're just going to have to call it a night. But thank you again for being here. And yeah, I mean, what a fantastic night. And again, thank you everyone who has joined us. Thank you everyone who got an alert. Just so moving forward, we're really going to have to work as a community to collectively try and push this out to as many places as you can. If you guys know any groups, any pages, any whatever, get posting and pointing them over to the Sean Atwood channel for prison stories, for true crime, for exposing individuals like this, and not like this, that John has been exposing, and all that good stuff, because we need your help. You've got to understand, you have to see freedom of speech as a movement now, sadly, and you have to move with us, because we can't move forward on topics like this without you guys. And even if just 10% of the people watching, if 90 people go and share this somewhere that is not just the easy place on your Facebook or whatever, you go and share it and you go and try and push out for the audience growth, you are doing a freaking awesome job. I'm not telling you to do that with the Meghan Markle stuff. You never hear me say that. I do 6 podcasts a week about Meghan. You never hear me say that. This is the stuff we need the help with. So get it pushed out. Go make a cup of tea and spend the whole time drinking that cup of tea, pushing this out. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. I'd really appreciate it. I'd probably go as far to say I'd be your best pal. Okay? I'm just saying. So listen, thank you all for being here. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Sean is back from tour now, so you'll be seeing him again soon. Hit the like button, and we'll see you all next week. I'll see you tomorrow at 12:30 for the Royal News Flash, but we will see you, John, next Thursday. You're a legend. Thank you all for watching. Love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.